Hi everyone, my name's Hannah and I'm a graduate of Otago and I now work as a research and development technician. So firstly, a bit about my background. So I have both a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science, both in Biochem. So I did my undergraduate up at the University of Canterbury. I'm from Christchurch, and then I moved down here to do my Masters. So since I did it in Biochem, I was actually up on the 3rd floor in the Cancer Genetics Lab, and I was supervised by Anita Dumbier. So for my Masters, I was actually looking at the role of a transcription factor in estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So while I was doing my university study, I also worked as a lab demonstrator, actually for Bioc 192, and I also worked as a mentor for a science camp that they had, which was sort of an outreach thing for high school kids, which was really, really useful. I also did a summer studentship actually up at Canterbury, but I know obviously Otago has them as well, and I found that really, really useful. That was actually looking at Campylobacter. So after university, I finished my Masters in July of 2021, and I pretty much started applying for jobs straight away. So I was actually only applying to advertised jobs. I didn't do any networking. I was very, very shy, and so I came to, I remember, a careers evening just like this, sat down, listened to the presentations, and then pretty much got the hell out of there because I was too scared to talk to anyone. So yeah, I was just applying to any jobs that really took my interest. I got a few interviews, and then eventually I landed a job at a company called Tection Group in December of 2021. And then started that early the following year. So my role since I've been at that company has actually evolved. So when I started there, I had pretty much like a double role where I was working as a 2IC in the lab and also working in R&D because our lab is quite seasonal. So in the off season, I was doing some R&D work, moved full-time into R&D and then worked my way up to be the head R&D technician there. A little bit about the company that I work for, because it's not really obvious when you first hear the name. So we're located, our headquarters is actually out in Mosgiel at the Invermay campus, so that's where Ag Research is. There's also a bunch of other businesses out there as well. Some are agricultural related, others aren't. So we've got our offices out there, a full-scale lab and our R&D team, and we also have branches in the UK and Australia. So most of our staff actually work out in Mosgiel because that's where it started, and we've got some staff scattered around in the UK and Australia. So in terms of what we actually do, so we create digital microscopes and software to automate microscopy-based tests. So pretty much think of any test that you do that you use a microscope, we are pretty much trying to automate it. So we're primarily in agriculture. So the company started back in the 90s and changed a little bit through what it was working on, but we are primarily looking at fecal egg counts. So yes, I did say fecal, we work with poo. So we're talking about gastrointestinal parasites. So a fecal test is what they use to measure parasite burden in livestock animals and also things like horses. So that device you can see in the photo there is actually our digital microscope. So this is one of our main ones that we actually sell. So it's designed to be used in field. So sort of think of like a farm, like big stations that are generally quite remote. And so what we do is we pretty much sell a kit with the microscope to our end user, which is quite often a farmer or a vet. And pretty much they prepare the sample, they put it into the device. You can see a wee cassette in there which holds our sample. We look at the images that the machine takes because they're uploaded to the internet, and then we provide them their results so they don't even have to look at it. So rather than just selling it to clients, we actually also use our own technology. So as I mentioned before, we have a lab. So what we do is we've sort of made some adjustments to our sample prep process to make it high throughput. And we process around 30,000 fecal egg count samples just from January to June every year, mainly for farmers. This is pretty much what we're seeing down our microscope. So our little cassette that I mentioned that we have in our microscope that gets put in there, it actually holds our sample. Pretty much what we do is we prepare the sample, we mix it with a flotation medium, and then the eggs rise to the top of a well that's in the cassette. And then we take photos of it. So we sort of take a series of photographs because the eggs accumulate around a rod on a meniscus that forms. take photos, we count all the eggs, so there's sort of two main egg types you can see, and then we count those, and then we provide that back to the client as like a measurement of parasite burden. So the fecal egg count result, the farmers can use that in a few ways, or farmers and vets. They use it to see if they need to treat their animals. They can also see if their treatment has worked. And they also use them to rank the animals to see if how resistant the animals are to parasites. And we also do sort of the reverse. We check to see if the parasites that the farmers have on their farm are resistant to treatment, which is quite a big problem for New Zealand farms that a lot of people don't know about. So you sort of think of like antibiotics, right? And there's obviously a big problem with the resistance to antibiotics. There are for treatments for parasites as well. There's a huge issue. So we're sort of, by developing this device, encouraging people to pretty much check before they treat. You know, you wouldn't go into your doctor and ask for antibiotics if you don't know if you've got an infection. The same thing sort of goes. So as I said before, microscopes are used for a lot of tests, not just fecal egg counts. I didn't know what a fecal egg count was before until I started my job, actually. So in our R&D team, we're actually looking at automating a lot of other different types of tests. So especially tests that rely on microscopes and also require skilled technicians that have to be on site to look down the microscope, because that can also be quite hard. So our team is working on hardware, software and different sample preparation methods to modify these tests for different areas. So for instance, a news article got released earlier this year about a collaboration we're doing with Awanui, so they're formerly ECL. They're at the hospital, they do a lot of the diagnostic testing for humans, so we've got an active project there. We're also involved in aquaculture, so farming of mussels, and we've also had projects going on in Africa with the Swiss Tropical Public Health Institute, looking at sort of increasing access to diagnostics in third world countries as well. What does my workday actually look like? I think like everyone else who's talked, mine is very, very varied as well. So pretty much everyone in our R&D team mainly has a project that they're working on. So this is a particular type of test that they are trying to modify to be automated. So I have one which is in the agricultural sector. So what I'm pretty much doing a lot of the time is processing and imaging samples, analysing the images and analysing the data I get out of it and writing it up, similar to a lot of research projects you do elsewhere and at university. My day's filled with a lot of meetings, unfortunately. So because I'm sort of the head of our group, I work with our R&D members a lot. I have meetings with them. I meet with other groups in our company. So our company is quite small. So I work quite closely with our sales and marketing team, our IT team, and also sometimes external clients and collaborators. So we do a lot of research projects, sort of as I mentioned on the other slide, with people not in our area. So you end up talking to them quite a bit. And so generally my meetings are sort of for management of different things, management of our team, and management of projects and already available products that I'm involved in. So a lot of my time is about helping out other R&D technicians, so I provide them support. I sort of do first line troubleshooting for their projects that they're working on, so this might be to do with data or sample preparation. And I also do a bunch of other R&D and science work. So it varies a lot. We're incorporating a lot of AI, which is obviously quite a buzz at the moment. So I test a few models to do with that. We have a model that runs over our wells, the image that I showed earlier. And I also do a lot of proof of concept work. So we actually get approached by quite a few people that sort of see what we do and say, I've got a test, I'm having to do it down a microscope, but we're struggling to get staff or we're struggling to get people on site. And so they're quite interested to see if we can help them with that, which is partially how the work with the mussel spat came about. Another thing I do a lot of work on is writing up information and checking information for documents that get released. So these might be to clients. So they might be like troubleshooting documents for their sample preparation methods they do. That sort of thing. I'm pretty much checking the science. So I think, as one of the other presenters said, you do a lot of fact checking. So you get quite good at that, I think, at university, and then transfers over to your job a bit. Another thing I do is actually a lot of results reporting. So I think I mentioned before, the fecal egg counts, we apply them to a few different products and services we provide. So FINAR is our breeding for resistance program. I'm involved in reporting out the results for that, and also our Drench Smart product, which is where we're looking at the resistant status of parasites that people have on their farm to different drenches. So how do people get into my role? It's going to vary by company and by field. Different employers sort of look for different things, and they have different ways they prefer to get people into the job. For Tection, it was pretty much, I actually applied for an R&D internship role. I showed up to the Zoom interview and there were 3 people instead of 1, and they said, "Oh, we saw that you applied, but we had a different role that wasn't advertised, and we think that you'd be a good fit." So I pretty much got asked on the spot about whether I'd be interested, and that was the role that was split between our diagnostic lab and R&D. So I pretty much started in that role, but that wasn't what I applied for. It was better, which was great. Other people progress from being a seasonal lab tech. So I mentioned before, our lab is quite seasonal. It mainly runs from January to June because that's when most of the parasites are around and are a problem because of the warmer weather. So we hire generally around 5 or 6 lab techs that work over that time. And if you do really, really well in the lab, and if our lab manager likes you, she might put you forward for a job, which is quite cool. So a lot of our old R&D team that don't actually work there anymore, they've moved on to other things. They got in through that route, so it's quite a useful way to get into the lab because it's kind of a bit easier to be hired for a seasonal lab tech role than a permanent role. And another way that people tend to get into the job is progressing from an R&D internship. So we've got someone who works for us in our R&D team at the moment who started on a Callaghan Innovation R&D internship over summer and then got offered a job at the end because she did really, really well, which was quite cool. So what does Tection look for? Again, this is going to vary based on the company, what they put a lot of focus on. So in terms of education, having a science degree is obviously quite useful. Preferably life science. We're working with biological samples most of the time, and so knowing your way around that is quite useful. Generally an honours or a master's is quite helpful due to the basic research experience you get from that, so it hones some of the soft and the hard skills that you do. In terms of experience, not required really. This is the first role for most of our R&D technicians at the company, and that goes for me as well. And yeah, actual research experience from postgrad is more than sufficient. Yeah, in terms of the skills, Tection puts a lot of emphasis on soft skills, so your problem solving, adaptability and flexibility. We change between a lot of different projects quite often based on what the priority is for the company. And so if you're able to change tack quite easily, that's really, really useful. Critical thinking is a big one, and communication. Like I said before, our company is quite small. We work quite closely, especially because of the product we sell. We are selling the product and then we're providing support, so we've got different teams that help with that, and for different projects you'll be working with other people that don't have the background that you have for the job that you do. So being able to communicate well in terms of that, and also writing and presenting and that sort of thing is really, really useful. I do a lot of putting things into layman terms for different documents we release, so that sort of thing is really, really handy too. Probably the most important is a willingness to learn. This kind of role, I don't think there's probably many, the soft skills at uni definitely help me a lot, but it's quite a specific job. We're doing, building microscopes. So when you start at the company, if you're willing to put your hand up if someone says, we've got this research project, who's interested, that's going to take you a long way, because most of the time, they just want someone to do the job. So if you're keen to learn, that helps an awful lot. In terms of the hard skills, like I said before, the actual experience is not required, and having a science degree helps. So those skills you learn from your science degrees, the data analysis and some basic statistics, your basic lab skills, so using a pipette, using a microscope, and your research skills, so reading scientific papers and pulling the important bits out and writing reports is really, really useful. I asked my manager earlier today what she actually looks for, and that last statement is from her. So she wants people that are really, really keen to find stuff out, pretty much. So again, a willingness to learn is really, really useful. So I thought I'd put a slide in about what I learned from the job hunting experience. I was terrified when I left. I had always known that I wanted to do a master's, But after that, hadn't thought about it. So when I started job hunting, I sort of learned over the like 6 month period that I was looking, I picked different stuff up. So I learned apply for the job even if you don't quite match what they're looking for. So a lot of the times they're not expecting to get everything that's on their list. That's just like the ideal. So just apply. We've got someone in our R&D team who applied for a job that she wasn't qualified for. It's quite a high up role. She knew she wasn't going to get it, but they had a job that wasn't advertised. So she ended up hearing back from them, but they said, we've got a different role that we think that you'd be great for based on your experience. She has a master's in chemistry, so it's not even a life science, but it worked quite well for the work that she does. The next one is you're not always going to get a response to your job application. There's a lot of my job applications, I don't know how many I applied for, that I just didn't hear back. I mean, obviously you want to hear back, but companies are really busy and sometimes they don't think it's important to get back to you, but it's not personal. Yeah, so don't take it too personally because the job hunting process can be quite grueling, especially if you did it the way that I did, where you're just applying to job adverts online, you don't really see the people behind them. And lastly, sort of as I was emphasising before, the soft skills are really, really important. So I think at uni, especially if you're doing like a science degree, you're probably thinking about the labs that you do and the particular skills that you're learning in there are really important, and they are, and for certain jobs, especially if you're working in some like high throughput labs, they're really important. But like for my employer and probably for a lot of the other ones out there, the soft skills are really important because that's what's going to take you that bit further. In terms of working, don't be afraid of jobs that aren't specific to your degree, especially your major. Like I was talking about before, my master's was actually up on the third floor at the cancer genetics lab. I don't use any of those, well, some of the hard skills I use a bit, I guess, but I was doing like Western blotting and cell culture. I don't do that. I'm sort of in the farming sector, I guess, a bit. I didn't know much about farming before I started the job, but I really, really enjoy it. And I do have this big sense that I'm contributing because like the work that we're doing is important, it's helpful to the sector. And lastly, another thing I emphasised before is putting up your hand and being willing to learn will take you a really, really long way. So honestly, just kind of showing up and, you know, being keen to learn will be really, really helpful for most jobs, I'd say. So yeah.